Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Tragic Music. In today's episode, we're going to be going over this track that I'm currently working on. It's again techno, 134 BPM, hard hitting, aggressive techno with a hypnotic element to it. So let's dive straight into it, and please subscribe and hit the bell icon for future videos. I'm still working on that routine, and we'll get back to you hopefully within the next week or so. So till then, let's jump straight into it. Thank you. So let's have a listen to the track before I explain how I produced it. Let's begin. So let's begin, guys. So let's start with the kick drum. as you can see, the kick drum is, I've got a simple 909 kick drum here. What I've done for this 909 kick drum is, I need to thank All You Need Is Live from YouTube for teaching me this basically. So after you take the 909 kick drum, what you can do is you can put on the filter, choose a different type of filter to add some more drive, set the frequency range to somewhere that you like, preferably in the lower range. I've reduced the sustain here and I've added some decay, but basically I've switched the go to controls and go to envelope. I've switched on the envelope and I've set it to maximum at 72, and then I played around with the decay here also. So if I switch off the filter, this is how the kick sounds without any envelope and without any of the drive. But then once you add sorry, excuse me 1 second. Yes, so once you add the filter on, you can hear the punch, the difference it makes. So moving on to the effects, next what I've got is let me switch all these effects off. So what I've first got is the saturator. I've increased the drive by 5 dB. I've also decreased it by 2 dB here, so to sort of balance it out, and so it doesn't peak and it doesn't just increase the volume, but also adds distortion. And then what I've done is I've added another saturator. As you can see, this saturator really makes a difference. So as you can see, after the saturator, I've added some dynamic tube distortion. This sort of gives it the warm kind of distortion, and so this is how it sounds without it. This is how it sounds with it. I've increased the drive here, I've increased the output a little bit, I've reduced the tone so to give it more of a darker vibe. Next what I've done is I've used so I really have to mention this, you really have to check out this channel on YouTube called All You Need Is Live. He does some amazing tutorials on techno and music production in general, and he has some amazing racks which I can't speak highly enough of. I use his racks in almost every track. So here in this I've used his rack called the Kick Punch. I'll leave the links in the description so you can go check it out. He explains on how you can use his rack. So yeah, so I've just used his rack here. When I switch it on and I play the kick drum, it sounds like this. If I switch it off, next, again, I've used another rack of his called the Kick Verb rack. This is sort of to give your kick a rumble, using reverb. So this is how the kick sounds without the rumble. This is how the kick sounds with the rumble. So then I've added a drum bus to this. So this is a technique I learned from another YouTuber and producer called Julian Earl. So he, according to Julian's, it really makes a lot of difference when you add a drum bus after your kick and rumble. So to sort of give it that extra punch. So this is what it does. Next, what I've done is, so in the drum bus, going back to the drum bus, what I've done is I've put the drive as 14, a little bit of crunch at around 10%. I've reduced the transients and I've kept the dry wet at 80% here. Uh, the next is an EQ. Here, this is how the kick sounds without the EQ. The EQ. As you can see, the EQ makes the kick sort of more rounded and gives it more of a darker tone. I've cut most of the high frequencies of up until I think maybe around 6,000-7,000 hertz, and then I've made a dip at around 260 hertz to reduce some of the muddiness. Then, lastly, on this channel, what I've done is I've put a limiter on to sort of make sure you don't blow your ears. So yeah, then I've also kept an auto filter on, which I've key mapped it to a control Z, the key Z here, so that I can easily switch it on and off, cut the low frequencies on and off to build tension during drops if I'm sort of testing this track out live. Then yeah, that is it. I've got another utility here in case I want to automate the sound during any part of the track while during the arrangement process. Yeah. So going on to next, okay, so we're done with the kick. Okay guys, moving on to the 16th hi-hats. As you can see, I have two channels here. One is the 16th hi-hats and one is the bells. This is how it sounds together. This is how the 16th hi-hats sound by itself. And this is how the bells sound by itself. So the bells is a sample I got from the Riemann Techno Drums 2 sample pack. You should really check that out. With the 16th hi-hats, this is the MIDI notes that I've drawn in, and as you can see, I've played with the velocity a bit. So the processing is pretty straightforward. I've just switched on the filter, put in some drive, and played around with the decay. I've added some drum bus with some crunch and drive and increase the transients. Then what I've done is I've added the EQ as well, and I've sort of shaped the sound. So moving on to the bells, this is how the bells sound. So what I've done to the bells is, the processing to the bells is some saturation. I've increased the drive by about 4.5 dB, and I've reduced the output by -1. So that's it, straightforward, simple, but this is how they sound together. And along with the kick, this is how it sounds. Okay, next, moving on to the offbeat hi-hat, or how I call it, the alternate hi-hat. This is how it sounds. So once again, the pattern is straightforward. It's every offbeat. And what I've done here is, so again, it's a sample from Riemann Techno Drums 2. I've played with the filter again, and I've added some drive. I played with the fade out to sort of make sure it gives this kind of a swooping effect towards the end of the sample. What I've done next is, see, this is how the sample sounds without any of the processing. So what I've done here is I've created two chains. On one of the chains, this is the effects I've got. On the second chain is the same effects, but I've added a utility on both. On one of the utility, I've right clicked here and I've changed the mode to mid side mode. So on this channel, I completely moved it to the left and made it completely in the mid side mode, a mid mode basically. And on the second one, I've added the utility and I've gone completely to the right and I've gone to the side mode. So this sort of, I've got two different sides and I've named it here mid and side. So now you're listening to the mid solo. So with the sample, I've added some drum bass. Again, straightforward, some drive, increase the transients. Then I've added some EQ, cut out the low frequencies. Then I've added utility, like I told you earlier. I made it completely on the left, completely mid. Then what I've done is I've added some delay, very slight amount of delay. As you can hear, this is how it sounds. Without the delay, with the delay. I've kept it on 3-step, linked, reduced the feedback to 35, the driver to 20, and yeah, I've moved around the frequency range to sort of get a nice effect. The next thing I've done is I've done a final EQ again to remove the low end, and then now let's go to the side, the next channel, the side. So here it's pretty much the same effects. Again, drum bus, the exact same drum bus, the exact same EQ, the exact same utility, but this time I moved it completely towards the right, 400%, so it's completely in the side stereo. Then again, EQ, I've reduced the low, and yeah, but now what I've done additionally on this side is I've added the reverb to the side of the alternate hi-hat. So with the reverb, I've switched on the low cut, so only the high frequencies have the reverb applied to it. I've made it the quality high, the decay time at 1.6, and the dry wet at sort of 20%, because you don't want it to be completely too much reverb on this, basically, because the sample already has some reverb to it. So then this is how it sounds with the rest of the track. The reverb on the sides here, so that's a really cool trick that I learned from Biscuvi, Yalson FA, again on YouTube. Sorry, what can I say, guys? For the past 2 years, everything that I've learned about techno production has been through you guys, so thank you so much. The next, what I've done is the percussion. So the percussion, this is how the percussion sounds. And the MIDI pattern is pretty simple, just towards the end of the first bar, 2 notes. Again, the sample pack is from Riemann's Techno Drums, and with without any of the processing. This is how it sounds. I've added some echo. Yeah, so these are the settings for the echo. I've added some reverb. I've played around with the filter at the bottom and with the resonance to give a good sort of effect. And then I've added some saturation to increase the intensity and the loudness. Some drivers at 5. I've reduced the output by -2, and the type of saturation is a soft sine. And then I've added some EQ. I've cut out the low end. So this is how it sounds for the rest of the track. Next is I've got the clave here. This is how it sounds. So the MIDI pattern for the clave is this is the MIDI pattern. This is how I've drawn it. As you can see, I've reduced the velocity of this note so to sort of make it a ghost note and give this rhythmic effect. The processing for the clave is so this is how the clave sounds without any of the processing. So this sample I use from a sample pack called Late Night Techno. You can get all these samples from Loop Masters. It's a great website. You can check that out. And here, this is how it sounds. Pretty straightforward. I haven't done anything with the sample apart from reduce the length. Then I've added some saturation to give it some volume to beefen it up. This is the drive, soft sine. Then I've added some filter delay. I've switched on the left and right, and I've given different delay timings for the left channel and the right channel to sort of create a stereo width within your mix. And these are the settings that I've used. The next is I've added some drum bass. See, again, it really brings the sound to the front of the mix. These are the settings for drum bass. Then I've added an EQ where I've cut the low frequencies and sort of boosted this region. Then finally what I've done is I've added a limiter because it's the same reason you don't want the levels to peak here. So with the rest of the track, this is how it sounds. Okay, moving on. This is the ARP. It's sort of like a bass hypnotic harp that I've tried. You can, if you see, it's nothing but in the key of G minor, and I've moved the A sharp note 1 octave above. This is G minor, as you can see. G minor is any minor chord is the root note +3 and then +4. So it's +3 is 1, 2, 3, and +4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. So G minor would be G, A sharp, and D. So what I've done is I've moved the A sharp 1 octave above to sort of give some width. It'll be really interesting with the detuned width here. So what I've done is this is how it sounds. As you can see, once again, I've used another amazing rack by All You Need Is Live. It says Hypnotic Bass Rack. So I played around with the arpeggiator settings, And then I've also used another rack of his called the Fat Synth rack, which really adds a lot of power to your leads, synth leads in this case. So I will leave the description to these racks and the links to the to the videos in the description, and then you can use you can go check his videos out. I really highly recommend that. What I've done is I've added an EQ and cut out the low frequencies. I've also added a glue compressor to glue it all in and make it sound much nicer and tight. And I've added a limiter again as well. So that's it for the harp. If I move on to the rolling snare, there's nothing too special about this, but this is just sort of to give. I just added a drum rack and a snare drum sample from the Riemann Techno drums. And what I've done is the MIDI pattern for this is just 16th notes again, but for the length of 4 bars. So this sort of adds a lot of builds a lot of tension before the drop. So this is how it sounds. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. What I've done is I've added some saturation to this. I've again on soft sign +4 dB drive. I've added some drum bus, little drive, some crunch, increase the transients. Then what I've done is I've added a reverb to this, and I've also the reverb. I've cut the high frequencies out and sort of kept the quality on high with the DK 1.2. And then I've added an EQ cutting out the low frequencies, and I've added an overdrive here. So what I've also done to this is, if you notice the envelope here, I played with the automation of the decay time towards the end. As you can see, I've increased it from 1.9 all the way up to 2.94 to sort of give to build tension and give to let people know that the drop is going to come. Yeah, so that this is how it sounds when right before the drop. So I can show that to you. Let me just show that to you. 1 second. Yes. So what I can do is that is how it sounds. Now is the pads, the final channel. So this is how the pad sounds. More like ambience, not a pad. I would call it ambience. What I've done here is I've used wavetable. I've used 2 oscillators. The first oscillator I've used saw harmonics, and the second oscillator I've used the harmonic series. And then what I've done is I've only switched on the first filter and I've modulated it. This is the amp settings, amp envelope settings. This is the envelope 2 settings. And what I've done here is I've chosen FM here, and I've increased the FM amount by 30%. This is the matrix. As you can see, I've increased I've left the envelope trigger oscillator 1 position, the LFO trigger oscillator 1 position, LFO 2 trigger oscillator 1 FM amount. So yeah, as you can see, you can check these here by yourself. And finally, the LFO settings are here. So after doing all of that, it really wavetable is all about the matrix. You really have to play and experiment and to really sort of get a good sound that you're looking for. So after this, what I've done is I've added some saturation, again analog, 5 drive plus 5 drive. Then I've added some reverb. I've cut out the high frequencies. I've cut out the low frequencies, and the decay time is at 6.8, quite high decay because obviously it's ambience. Then I've added some overdrive to increase the sound. I've added some redux to sort of give it like a weird kind of texture. It sort of gives a very slight crackling effect. Then I've added some EQ, and I've sort of narrowed down this frequency range. And then I've added a vocoder, and I've sort of played around with these settings. This is how it is. Then I've added a final EQ and cut out the low frequencies again. And I've added a compressor and sidechained this to the kick with the ratio at the max. And together with the rest of the track, this is how it sounds. So thank you guys. That's it.